Hello, my name is Dr. William Smith, and I'm giving a YouTube presentation that is a little bit more in-depth than the presentation that I will be presenting this afternoon for the Negotiators Conference, Michigan Association of Negotiators. And the focus of this presentation is to share with you 21st century solutions to fix these 21st century problems that we face. And it's built in with a lot of Daggett's work on effective and efficient. What I'll cover in this presentation as quickly as possible, but you'll be able to archive and review this, is the journey that I was part of in Kent City when I was a superintendent for 3 years. And some focuses on areas that might be of interest to you as an HR person, as a superintendent, as an interested stakeholder, so forth. So first I'll cover a journey. Then I'll go through it and discuss my thoughts on improved achievement despite staffing reductions, exploring planning period effectiveness and efficiencies, time shifting to expand student learning, applications of an adjunct model applied to the K-12 setting, focusing on applying diagnostic tools to enhance learning, exploring 21st century compensation scales for educators, and using staffing shifts to create effective and efficient educational services. Again, it's important to know that these aspects are data-driven, research-based, and student-centered. It is what drives the 21st century fiscal leader. The fiscal leader and the educational leader can't separate themselves. There isn't two different people there. They must become one. So my focus has always been on program-level evidence of service. Fund things that are successful. Let data drive that. And Daggett does a great job of identifying how you can go about doing this without it becoming personal. Without it becoming an attack of rhetoric. He focuses on this concept of efficient and effective. In this concept, Daggett talks about basically this is all about a shift of shift from focusing our views and inputs and programs to output on student performance. Oftentimes we fund things because we fund the people there, but we don't use the data to drive whether or not that's effective. So in detail, we have to apply some specific questions. And what the great thing about Daggett's work is, it's about common sense. And you can share common sense with parents. You can share common sense with people. And it's pretty tough to go against common sense, especially if common sense and data go hand in hand. And basically focus on these three questions. What is student performance and how do we measure it? How do you determine the cost of various tools and strategies and programs, etc., to be able to get to that student performance target? And how do you systematically compare improvements in student performance by tools, strategies, and programs and the effective cost that those things are associated with? So as you look at this, let this guide your decisions. Let these tools guide it. Don't let it be personal in nature. And I know that it deals with people. But again, schools deal with people, and kids come first. So this is a tool for you to keep it that direction. So, in his EE framework, he has three central purposes. Basically, it's a guide to the tools and professional development and opportunities that you should utilize as a leader. It helps you to serve and compile a national repository of best practice and efficiency and effectiveness, and you can find that and use those tools to drive above. And basically allows you as a district and state level leader to be able to do the right thing for kids. So, basically understanding what's going on. What you have to do is keep it about kids, use data, research, and best practice to drive your choices, and stay away from front page material. You never, ever want this image in your boardroom, on your local TV, on the front page of your newspaper. These type of wounds take a long time to heal. Don't let your community have this kind of image when they think of your school, your teachers, and whether they think kids come first in your district. It's hard to heal those wounds. So, what's going on when it comes to 21st century schools? Basically what's happening in Michigan and in this local district that I represented was that we were facing a 21st century business approach which led to the appearance of a catastrophic per pupil cut. And we only had the tools of the 1960s to apply. Now this is somewhat dated because this presentation is an archive of the thought process and the steps taken prior to our legislature passing several initiatives that will give us some tools. And what's the problem? Basically, revenue's down. And if you look at these dates, again, these refer to the 2010-11 school year and the budgeting process that led to that. So revenue's down, expenditures are up. And for Kent City, the specific district, those are equivalents of over $1 million. And Kent City was on a $12 million budget. So if you look at the brief history of Kent City, and it's similar in scale and the challenges, but it has declining enrollment, high poverty, out of place in the region that we're in, very veteran staff. And the only reason I mention that is that it's veteran according to the pay scale. 60th highest paid staff in the state of Michigan, and a base foundation district fund balance when I took the district over as superintendent was $17,000. And in 2010-11, the necessity to cut 1.2 to 1.7 million is virtually insurmountable if you apply old world, old theory past practice. So without structural change, the district will be fiscally unable to survive and subject to a financial manager. So what basically happened was we engaged our stakeholders in the budgetary process and determining what was important and not important. And they determined these 4 characteristics that were essential. Number 1, we're not going to eliminate transportation, we're not going to eliminate athletics, we're not going to increase class size. We redefined that to student-to-teacher adult ratio. And again, we wanted that to be specific as to certified teachers, and that'll be important later on. And then we didn't want to eliminate programs for kids. We needed to be competitive. So if we were going to right-size that, that would be a huge challenge. How do you cut 1.2 to 1.7 million from a $12 million budget without touching any of those things that you spent your money on? We started with a SWOT analysis tool. And our parents, we had over 700 of these turned in, and we're a district of 1,200 students. Based on this input, that's where we developed this foundation of principles, those 4 points of what we weren't going to cut. From that, we populated what the cost would be, and then we shared with them for feedback purposes, understanding that they do know what those 4 points were. And along this side is the right size strategy. This is what the cost savings would be and what it really meant to do that. And then they gave us input on both of those. So this was a 2-page piece. We got significant impact or input here, and that helped us drive these pieces. Now, the bottom line is you need to know this. Kent City, I get 1,200 students. A base foundation district was ranked 5th in the pay scale, overall pay scale in Kent County. And this is from our newspaper from 2008. So there was no hiding the fact that this was a challenge, and it was a fiscal challenge, and it involved HR. So again, when we look at applying 1960 style solutions, if we're just to take this cut/slash type philosophy, class sizes are going to go up, fewer programs will be available, and districts with more fund reserves will be able to outlast Kent City, and that creates that downward spiral of decline. If we applied 21st century solutions, Kent City Community Schools would be able to reduce staffing costs by $800,000 without cutting one program, increasing one class size, or impacting one student. Now that is pretty innovative and creative. So what, as Daggett would say, the devil is in the details. So what are the details? Again, using this old logic, we would cut our fat first, and we've done that, redefining what fat was. And this is a journey that most of you probably have already taken yourself. In your districts. As you go through, you're basically starving your district. Now, the result is you have a skeleton school district robbed of their culture and 1960s model in the 21st century world. It just doesn't function. So just before you reach the end of this journey, and many local districts in Michigan will do that very soon, you're cutting flesh, you're cutting the fat, you're having amputations, and that's leading to death. Teacher voice becomes focused on the things other than instruction. And we don't want that picture that I showed you earlier. Oftentimes it leads to recall of board members and superintendents getting fired. Are we there yet? No, we're not. But are we applying 21st century logic? I don't think so. So, how did the tools work for the 1960s GM? Well, you know that, and I know that. It created massive layoffs, declining product quality, historical loss of global marketplace, no longer competitive, and bankruptcy. Then GM applied a 21st century solution with cooperation of the UAW. The results regained profitability, improved market share, increased energy within the marketplace and organization, and globally competitive. How did GM do it? They capped legacy costs, created a 2-tier wage format, and the concept of 8 hours worked for 8 hours paid. That is critical. Do we have similar challenges? Yeah, we do. We do. In the state of Michigan, we do. In our educational setting, we do. So as we look at this based on the 1960 style contracts, if we apply those styles, we're spending money for workers who are working or getting paid for 8 hours but not providing 8 hours of work. That's in the work setting. Now, if you apply that to schools, in Kent City, our teachers work 174 days. They work 6.5 hours per day and earn a total compensation average of $80,000, and that's pretty conservative. Broken down further, they work 174 days per year, teaching 5 hours per day, utilizing a 1-hour planning period per day to teach those 5 hours plus a 30-minute lunch. And they deserve lunch. I mean, everybody deserves lunch. But this is just symbolic of understanding that are you getting the most effective use of what you're paying for? How does it compare? Well, if you look at the left side here, you're going to see GM's model. You're going to see how that works. Oftentimes, GM had workers compensated for 6.5 hours of work, but 8 hours of pay. The result was a death of an icon for us. If you look further to the school setting model, you'll see that this is a challenge that we have to face and apply to this death struggle. What has hurt us there is also will hurt schools. Now, using 21st century logic to schools, you can apply this to staffing models. HR-related costs add up. About 80% of the district's expenses, unless these decrease, will be we won't be able to fund that. If you look through Kent City staffing model, students are engaged in learning 6 hours a day. Teachers are engaged in teaching 5 hours a day. In our 6-period day, that's 1/6 of our staffing costs. If we were simply to expand that, we'd be able to cut our expenses by 16%. 4-block model, that's even bigger. It's 25% of your staffing cost. If you're on other instructional models, trimester model, it's 20% of your staffing costs. So how can we do staffing costs and expenses and not increase class size? Well, if you have a teacher absent and another teacher covers it, teacher A covers it, teacher B, teacher A covers it not for free, but they cover it for hourly rate. So what if you applied hourly rate to that same period of time that a teacher would have used for planning, that we're paying them 20% of their salary? If we were to ask them to do it for the full year, it would be considered an overload, and that teacher would get 1.2 FTE, or 20% increase to their salary for doing what we've hired them to do. So if we were to take a look at it under the hourly rate model and shift that process out of the traditional day, then we would be able to have basically a cost of $2,610 that would be reasonable if you could get the hourly rate model. Now, each of your hourly rates might change, but bottom line is, can we still afford planning period during the day? Can we still afford an hour at the rate that we would pay a teacher to teach students, to plan to teach students? Can we still do that? Is the prep work the same cost? Can we distinguish between prepping and have a reasonable cost for that, and apply that reasonable cost to an increased school day for the teacher that would mirror what a typical worker would have? So if you look at this stuff, you can basically see the thought process here. And applied to Kent City, if you were to take that 16.7%, shift everyone to a full-time day, you would be able to reduce staffing by 16.7%, and then you would not increase class sizes. If you look at that model, there's cost savings there that are significant. It doesn't harm kids, and it allows you to move ahead. And ultimately the question is planning period effective and efficient use of resources in the education of students? Back to Daggett's model. And that's open for debate. So what does it take to plan in the 21st century? I don't know. I think that it's significantly changed. We have better tools now. We can plan better. Does it take as long to be able to prepare? And where did planning come from? Well, planning basically came from as a compensation piece. What we have to do in our communities, and involving all stakeholders beyond just instructional staff or superintendents, but everyone, is class sizes and programs more important than planning period? Our governor's given us some incentives to be able to have that discussion with some real powerful variables that will happen if we decide one way or another. So by the numbers, 5-6 model, you can see what those savings and costs are. If you're using a 4 or 5 model, basically trimester, you can see what those cost savings would be to your district. And if you're using a 3/4 model or block schedule, you can see what those cost savings would be. And that's broken down with $80,000 as total compensation for the FTE. And you can use the ratio, whatever you need to do to fit it to where you're at. So what we have to do is find common ground. How do we understand what the teacher work world is? and how can we make that work world fit for us. And again, what makes planning periods valuable for students, and this is the effective, efficient model. And you can see the thought process behind that. It is important that teachers plan. It is important that it's common that all teachers can get together, and it's hard to do that within the school day without increasing your compensation costs. So the 21st century role of a teacher in Kent City could be they teach 6 to 6 periods, they have a common collaborative period in which they're compensated for their hourly rate beyond the school day. And if you look at that, how does it approach the 5th grade K-5? And that's a little bit different. But basically you need to understand where we came from. Basically K-5, those teachers have planning, and other teachers are employed to provide specials. And in Kent City you can see what those specials were. Now, has it always been that way? Well, back in the one-room schoolhouse, one teacher did everything. And the rigor is much lower in the elementary school, although the impact is still as great. So when you look at that, how can we better meet the needs of our students? And there's lots of ways to do it. Classroom teachers could travel with those students to the special, and then you can use a consultant, which is a highly qualified teacher in that area, paid hourly rate, to be able to complete the course content specifics for that area. And now you're getting a team-taught environment that allows for the blending of that discipline with the other core content areas. So there's lots of good ways to do it. And if you look through this process, it's doable. And there's some significant savings. Again, the teacher travels to the specials, making this content relevant, multidisciplinary. It links the instructional model so that everything ties together. And for every 6 elementary FTEs, you'll need to have 1 FTE of hourly rate. And again, this is a cost shift model. For those of you that are familiar with the college model, what you're seeing here is the 2-tier wage scale or an adjunct model. Now, if Kent City were to use this process in the elementary school, you can see the impact. It would save significant amount of dollars per staffing model or per building. And in Kent City, it's only 1 building, but if you applied it all across the board, you'd be all set. So is there an example of this model in use today? And believe it or not, yes. And if you're to take a look at it, you can just simply click on this link, and you'll be able to find Kentwood, who's applied it to 10 schools. They've applied it in the core content area, and they're using a little bit different, but what they're using is a core content teacher. And they're also using certified, highly qualified teachers at an hourly rate to be able to provide close-knit instruction. What it's done is actually reduced the certified teacher to student ratio. And I'm not sure whether certified teachers to student ratio, the variable depends on whether or not they're paid by salary or hourly rate. I'd like to see some research on that, and that would be, again, along Daggett's model. Now this gets a little bit deeper. If you were to look at shifting planning periods outside the school day and actually shifting the way the school day works and going 4.5 days per week of instruction, and then a half day a week of authentic instruction where they would be out and about based on grade level and other types of experiences, now you're looking at some really neat, innovative ways and even more significant savings. If you look at this half-day Friday model and shifting, you'd see that there are some significant opportunities to not only save money, but also engage your community, engage your kids in relevant learning experiences, allow them shadowing experiences based on grade level and age level, and redefine who teachers are. And that's not a bad thing. And if you were to take a look at what it would look like in a calendar, here you'd see the half-day Friday model, and you'd see how that would impact a district such as Kent City. And you're looking at almost $1 million of savings approaching it that way. And again, you can define what these staff are. You can actually bring in extra interventionists at hourly rate based on the staff savings that you would have through this. So how would half-day Fridays work with students and parents? You can basically see how this works. Students and parents would have an advantage. Students would have a great opportunity for authentic learning challenges, experiences. You'd be able to do different things such as expanded art or fine arts programs, expanded athletics. Imagine what you can do with that half day. Imagine the training that teachers could get on an hourly rate basis on that half day. If you look at the opportunities you have available when you start to shift time and place, you know that it gives your kids great opportunities. So if you're looking through this process, you'll be able to see that students and teachers and everyone has an advantage. This is another graph of how that works, the half-day Friday piece. So, what can half-day Fridays uniquely offer to our schools? Well, it's a great opportunity to become competitive. And how can you compensate the consultants that would work there? And this is basically the hourly rate model so that you can understand that. So, will you get quality applicants? And the answer to that is yes. And I think that we've seen that opportunity play itself out in Kentwood. You can get some debates in the media about this, and we basically need to understand that there's more to the cliff. And no shot against Dave Murray, a great writer for the Grand Rapids Press. But I think districts have done a lot to prepare for this, but we're preparing within an old theory of operations. The legislators have in the past tied our hands a little bit, but now they've freed them, and it's our job to be able to take advantage of that. We don't need to cut limbs off. Local school boards do not stand a chance if we have to challenge organized labor in this process of change. People are pretty attached to status quo. Now, if we want to look at the future, there's lots of ways to be able to take a look at this, and one of those is understanding blended learning, understanding using the diagnostic tools, and this is a little brief look at how we can provide efficiencies and effectiveness through the use of lab instruction. We've all seen it if we've gone to college. We just don't think of that process as much in the K-12 setting. But if you use the classroom lab scheduling, you can use diagnostic tools to be able to reduce the staffing costs, free up effectiveness for teachers and students, allow acceleration, and actually stop the guessing. These classroom formats beyond the traditional schooling format using certified teachers as lab techs allows you all kinds of opportunities to be able to change the school day. When we look at large-scale classes that all students have to complete that could have a great component that's off-site or individualized, you can use one staff member in a large setting, and then other staff members highly qualified and certified on an hourly rate to be able to provide small group instruction, guidance, mentorship, so forth. Economics is a great way to be able to explore that. That's just one example that was thrown out there in Kent City. Are people doing this model today? Yep. And again, Kentwood Public Schools has done it. You can go visit this website. They've done it with geometry. The great thing there is they took 3 sections, merged them into one, kept one highly qualified certified teacher, which is on the pay scale, salaried pay scale, hired 2 hourly rate employees that are highly qualified certified teachers who become work in a team. So it's a 3-person team, all 3 certified in math to be able to meet the needs of students. And we know math failure rates are about 33% across the country. And it's proud to state that in Kentwood's model, those failure rates drop to 0. Students are accelerating. They're completing the courses sooner. They feel individualized, and you can read some of that. You can visit their site. And again, there are some long-term challenges that you can face. One of which is the contract that pay scale that most teachers are built upon or districts are built on. It's a 30-year model that includes jumping up laterally and vertically, horizontally and vertically on your pay scale based on qualifications, years experience. Oftentimes years of experience and qualifications such as increased master's degrees has nothing to do with the ability to teach or educate. And again, back to the effective and efficient model, there are better ways to be able to approach that. This is a way to approach it that was thrown out in Kent City, proposed salary schedule that was a 30-year model. It topped out at $80,000, and if you look at this, payment occurs on these columns, and that pay scale would stay the same until they reach the new 5-year scale. And looking at that, you can see the savings that goes back to the district over the time of the employee. So in this essence, the district employee would work year 1, 2, 3, and 4 on $31,000, year 5, $38,000, and stay on that scale 6, 7, 8, and 9. Other incentives would be added based on merit pay. So this is a true merit pay scale. Now, if you look at this, combining the merit pay scale, there's some additional pieces that you can apply to it. One of which you can apply based on stipends and so forth. and you can create a year 28, 29, and 30 scale, which is an early buyout incentive. But if you apply it as a mentor, paid through a Schedule B piece, and I'm not sure whether or not our retirement plan has dealt with this, but according to current law, this, if paid in a true scale, those teachers could get a significant uptick in their salary as long as they depart the district at year 30. And that best 3-year average impacts their retirement. So obviously this is a challenge, and this is new thinking, and I'm not sure what the impact is, but I know that in Kent City at one point there were 10 teachers that were beyond year 41, and that equated to $10 million to the district. The district operates on a $12 million budget, so the time frame from their 30th year to their 41st year was $10 million on that district, and again on a $12 million budget. So this is an issue that has to be responded to. Now, again, people retire on their time, and they depart on their time. But if you have an opportunity to be able to reduce your cost and still keep them involved and engaged, that's a great way to do it. We looked at what compensation, total compensation, again, this is pre-healthcare caps. In Kent City 2009 and 10, we had 29 staff. Of the 73 that were over $100,000 in total compensation. 10 and 11 is 41. And 11, 12 on the same scale, same projection, it would be 51. There's no way a district can stay funding itself on that. So we just broke it down to what that would look like based on total instructional cost, those below, those above, and you can see the visual of that. We broke it down to daily rate, and we applied in 9-10 an early retirement rehire. And early didn't mean early, they retired on 41, and you could see the differences and the savings of where we were at across the board. Those teachers worked for a 0.4. They worked at the maximum cap that they could earn under the retirement laws. And as we go through this process, this allowed us to be able to navigate some immediate needs in compensation cost. It did not lead to increases in salary or increases in class size or decreased programs. So again, these are all processes and procedures within Daggett's model of effective and efficient, innovative, creative 21st century tools to apply to the learning process. If you look at how this works, understanding total compensation variables is critical. Explore the opportunities available to you. I appreciate your time, and if I can be of further service, please let me know. Thank you very much.